remember my imaginary friends?
I can't remember if your imaginary friends or the voices in your fucking head.
What's the difference? Do you remember what you would yell to me when I was off in my own world?
Earth to Gert.
Where are you, Gert? Earth to Gert! Gert! Earth to Gert! So I'm starting a podcast, and that's the title.
Earth to Gert?
Yeah. The nerves that take over the second I hit record. Gosh, I don't know if I want that to go away. It is 8:30 at night, so I'm going to try to talk like I have a little life in me, but I don't really have a whole lot of life in me this late at night. But here we go. So yeah, welcome back to another episode of Earth to Gert. The process to do this is fascinating, that whole creative process, but trust the process, they say. I just really hope the process knows I'm trusting it. I have to, right? As I said in the last episode, my hope going into this was to be recording 2 months ahead of each episode's intended release date, but I was lucky enough to be picked for jury duty in March. And as much fun as that was, it really messed up my schedule a little bit. And then it's also spring sports season. I didn't necessarily take that into consideration when planning out this schedule. I mean, I did, but I guess as Reagan mentioned in her episode, your brain kind of blocks out some things. I didn't really remember that April and May were going to have me at one field or another 9 out of 7 days. I'm not even joking. I had 9 games to go to in 7 days. It's fine though. We're fine. It's all going to be just fine. I know in my soul that I'm going to miss these days so much. And if and when I air these episodes out of order or have to skip a week, it's fine. We're all going to get through it just fine. So I did start to mini spiral and maybe got a little squirrely after I aired the first episode. And I maybe get a little extra squirrely every Thursday now too. Squirrely is the term I've been using for myself when my anxiety is maybe just a little bit higher than where it feels healthy for me. There was a pretty big emotional release that came after finally doing this. I expected it. I planned for it. I intentionally stayed home alone to sit with it, to feel it, to write about it and cry. Receiving love is not something I'm great at, but I'm working on it. If you watched the video where I announced the podcast, you can see my finger is all chewed up. Biting my nails is one of my first signs that my anxiety is going up. That actually happened at the Melissa Etheridge concert. I loved it, but crowds and people aren't really my thing. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for the lesbians, though. But anyways, during my mini spiral, I also got sick. It started the day after the first episode aired. I probably caught something in that sea of lesbians, but I am a firm believer that when the mind is battling some stuff, the body can't fight off the other shit. So with the sickness brought exhaustion, which got me off all of my routines. I didn't get my walks in, I wasn't eating, my sleep was off, which led to insomnia, which led to me crying to my counselor about the stupid thoughts happening in my brain. For years, I have had what I think are intrusive thoughts about people in my life dying by suicide. This past week, I had a night where I couldn't sleep because that thought was consuming me. I went into counseling pissed at my brain, angry that it was doing this again. But after 50 minutes of magic, I left feeling confident again, confident to be me again, and confident that that was just some old wiring and that I am not my thoughts. So I am back to my normal routines, sort of. I mean, my life is still bonkers busy, and I added this little hobby of being a podcaster into my schedule, but it'll all balance out soon, and I'm feeling better. So let's finally talk more about my anxiety. I always knew that there was something there. I definitely always knew there was some sort of social anxiety more than just being introverted. I was always the shy kid, the sit in the back of the class, please, please, please do not call on me kind of kid. I also knew that walking into anywhere public made me feel like shitting myself, and I knew that I often avoided going into public to avoid that feeling. The only place I felt confident was on the volleyball court or softball field. Or to be honest, I was a pretty confident kid at my childhood best friend's house. I'm sure many times a little too confident for Chris's liking. But I didn't become aware of my anxiety until 2016. That was when things were the worst for me. The generalized anxiety was through the roof. I worried about everyone and everything, analyzed everything I did or said, every text message I sent or received. I cried a lot about anything. I was angry and short tempered, and that's when I started having panic attacks. How do I describe a panic episode to someone who has never experienced it before? For me, it's the inability to breathe. It's the heartbeat in my ears being the only sound I can hear. It's the heart pounding so hard you're positive people can see it from the outside. It's the tunnel vision and a feeling I can't really describe. For some reason, the word hollow keeps rattling in my brain. Empty, dread, paralyzed, like not in control in any way. But one of the worst things about experiencing panic for me has been the fear of panicking again. But like I've said before, I truly believe anxiety is normal and that it is a physiological response to our environment. There is legit science-backed evidence that shows changes in the brain when it's anxious and under chronic stress. I definitely do not have the kind of mind that can retain and then regurgitate neuroscience shit precisely, so Google this if you're curious, but I believe it's the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, that gets bigger. The prefrontal cortex sort of shuts down, and then there's something going on with the hippocampus too. And when the hippocampus is messed up, it like causes the brain to have a harder time calming down because it can't really figure out if it's real or imagined threat. So anxiety is not just something in your head. To quote Dr. Mark Hyman, this isn't just psychology, it's biology. The actual organ itself changes and becomes unhealthy. That is when we experience these symptoms, these heightened states of anxiety. So, what did my environment look like in 2016? I was right smack in the weeds of parenthood. My kids were 8. I was living with my sister and her 2 kids. More on that soon. I was working in the respectable field of caring for one of our most vulnerable populations, but barely making enough money to afford my car and feed my kids. And the program and population of individuals I was working with at the time was arguably one of the hardest within that agency. At least it was mentally. And I was also at the end of a relationship, one of the more significant relationships of my life. If only I understood the nervous system back then, understood that I was living in absolute survival mode, constantly in fight or flight, or mostly freeze. But I know that it took a long time for my brain to get that sick, for my amygdala to get so big and out of whack that it was sending threat warnings to my body about everything. and for the prefrontal cortex to shut down the way that it did. I know it wasn't just my life in 2016 that had my brain so unhealthy, and that it took many years of poor habits and lifestyle to get where it was, which, by the way, is the case for any chronic illness. Yeah, you might have a genetic predisposition for that illness, but without years of poor lifestyle and chronic stress, that illness would not be so chronic. So my life up until that point had not been very healthy. I ate absolute garbage for all of my adult life. I stopped playing volleyball or exercising at all. I was an emotional train wreck, a financial train wreck. My depression and suicidal ideations hit their worst in my early 30s. It was after the night where I really wanted to end my life when I first tried to make some lifestyle changes. I tried to stop eating shit and exercising more. I signed up to run some 5Ks. I helped my sister start a volleyball club and got back into the sport I had loved so much growing up. I tried therapy and medication for the first time, and all these changes would last just long enough to start feeling better, and then I'd slip right back into those same old habits and coping strategies. Finally, after years of that roller coaster of the highs and lows, and with the panic and anger I was feeling, I got myself back into counseling and really started to build my toolbox. And I spent the next 4 years doing just that, building my toolbox. Building the toolbox that eventually saved my soul during the pandemic. And not to be an overachiever or anything, but so far that was 3 of the 4 most common types of anxiety. But don't you worry, I think I got a little bit of the phobia in me too. A couple of years ago I passed out after seeing a snake. That was a fun day. But I was only ever officially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I think that's just something they have to label you as in order to get you some Xanax in your life, but is it really generalized anxiety disorder, or is it just a symptom of being human in the United States, especially being a mom in this world, this society? I think deconstructing that question and learning the role my environment plays on my symptoms has been the key to my health and recovery. And as I've said, without the pandemic and that forced shift in my life, I never would have known that I could experience life where that deeper seated anxiety was quieter. An anxiety that through my entire experience I have learned was always driving the bus. Now I feel like I'm the one driving the bus, and I get to yell at the anxiety to sit down when she's getting a little too squirrely back there. And I'm happy to report that I no longer feel like shitting myself when I go into public. Last summer I was able to go to a restaurant and sit by myself at the bar and have dinner alone. Like, that was huge. I can't tell you how freeing that felt, or how freeing it feels to finally be starting a podcast after being so freaking scared of what everyone else thought of the idea. But it's the smaller wins too. It's the quieter mind. It's the lack of hesitation to live my life, the ability to make a decision based on my wants, needs, and feelings alone and not second guess what others might think or say. It's confidence and the ability to just move throughout my day without my brain ruminating on shit or frantically bouncing from one thing to another. I don't think I ever would have gotten to this level of freedom that I feel today without the experience of EMDR and all of the work that went along with it for me. I'll have more episodes ahead dedicated to that journey specifically. And next week I have an amazing episode with my big sister Kim. Oh, I'm so freaking proud of her for telling her story. A story I had never heard like this before. You really will not want to miss it. And you might want to have some tissues handy. And I know that there are many of you out there experiencing heightened states of anxiety or depression right now. It's almost impossible not to be in the society that we live in. And every single time that I post something publicly about my journey, I receive messages from others that are in the same boat I was in or am in. Some, unfortunately, suffering so much worse than I ever did. And my heart breaks often for the pain and suffering I see all around me. All I can do is offer some hope for healing. There's a saying in the mental health community, it gets better. And it truly does. With the right tools, the right environment, some discipline and self-love, symptoms can and oftentimes do get better. If you're going through some shit, whether that's depression or anxiety or honestly any chronic illness, I'd be looking at it from that idea that your brain is sick, like the actual organ itself. How do you heal a sick brain? Well, you have to include healing the gut. 90% of, or more of your serotonin is in the gut. Nutrition is so freaking important. You have to pay attention to what you eat and drink if you have any desire to be healthy. Sodas and energy drinks are absolutely poison, like straight up poison. They're wreaking havoc all over your body that will have lifelong effects. And if you haven't talked with your doctor about your symptoms, I would definitely start there. Explore the options of medication. I have an episode coming up with Reiki about that, where she talks about her journey with meds. I'd also highly recommend getting into counseling and looking at EMDR therapy or other holistic practices. Movement, so very important. Movement in nature is even better. So much of this is about regulating the nervous system. Nature is an amazing tool for that. Barefoot too if you can. I'd also be ditching the social media and the phone as much as possible. Set limits. Get off your phone at least an hour before you go to bed. That brings me to sleep. What is the quality of your sleep like? Figure out a healthy schedule and routine for your sleep. Get back into that circadian rhythm. And the last piece I'd look at are the toxins in your life. Toxins are everywhere, especially in the food we're eating. If I was trying to heal my mind or body, it'd be a hard no for me on anything processed. If it has a marketing team or some sort of label convincing you it's healthy, that'd be a nope for me. It's poison. That shit contributes to those brain changes I mentioned earlier. This shit is literally created in a lab by scientists to keep us addicted to it, and they know it's slowly killing us. They profit off of it slowly killing us. But knowledge is power. If you know better, you can do better if you want. If you don't, or if you're not ready, that's okay too. It's work and it sometimes sucks, but I promise it's worth it. Start small and keep building from there. I feel like I talked fast in that one. Did I talk too fast? Anyways, thank you so much for listening. If any of this resonates, please do me a favor and pass it along to a friend. If you're feeling stuck and you don't know where to start, please reach out. Or if you need, you can text or call the Suicide and Crisis number at 988. You don't have to worry that they're automatically going to lock you up. They're really there to talk to you first. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to come back next week to hear my conversation with my big sister, Kim.